I wanted to create edge detection masks in EEVEE so that I could do edge wear and grime buildup, so I really needed to be able to control the thickness. You can't really do this in EEVEE with a shader. In Cycles, it's easy. I found some very simple methods online, but nobody was talking about controlling the thickness of the edge. I'm not making a toon shader, I need this to use as a mask. So let's create our own workaround. So naturally we're going to have to create a material. That part's easy, but to give it the information we need, we're going to have to use a geometry node setup. Don't worry if you've not done that before, it's easy when you know how. Go to the Modifiers tab, click Add, choose Geometry Nodes, and create a new setup. So we'll go to the Geometry Node editor, and it'll look something like this. We're going to add a node called Store Named Attribute. As you can imagine, it's going to store an attribute that we give a name to, and I'm going to call this attribute Edge Detect. So let's go over to the Material editor, add a material output, and we're going to use this node called Attribute. In the name box down here, we're going to put Edge Detect. This has to match what we put into that geometry node just now. Let's plug it into the material output, and everything goes black. We'll go back over to our geometry node, and we're going to add this node called Edge Angle. Take the signed angle output of that and plug it into a math less than node. This value is in radians, so 0.4 will do. You can tweak this later. So if we plug the output of that into our named attribute, you can see something starts to happen. The less than node ensures that all of the sharp convex angles are highlighted. We want the concave ones as well, so add a math absolute node here. Later on I'll show you how to access the concave and convex edges separately, and even how to combine them into one shader. It doesn't look right yet, but that's because there's not enough geometry in our object. I'm going to fix this by adding a subdivision modifier to my object, setting it to simple and placing it above my geometry node. Another option is to add a subdivision node to your geometry node setup, but if you're going to use this on multiple objects, it might be better to control it on a per object basis like this. If you just want a simple edge detect, you're done, but we're not. I'm going to add a delete geometry node set to edge, and I'm going to wire it up like this. As you can see, everything has been deleted from our object except for those sharp edges. So now what we want to do is get the distance from every point of the object to one of these edges. So I'm going to add a mesh to points node set to vertices, and I'm going to put it in here, and then we'll get all of these points along the edge. Now we're going to bypass all of our destructive nodes so we can just pass through the values. We'll drag a sample nearest node out of the mesh to points node, then we'll add a position node and put that into the other input. This node will tell us which of the previously selected edges are the closest to any point of our geometry. So now we want to measure the distance from any point to the edge, so we'll tell it to run through all the points. Drag a sample index node out of the sample nearest node and set it to vector. We'll plug the position into the value, and make sure you plug the mesh to points geometry into this node, not the sample nearest geometry. So let's calculate the distance to the edge. We'll add a vector math node set to distance, plug the position into the top, and plug the sample index into the bottom. So now if we plug our distance node into the value of the store named attribute node, you'll see that our object gets darker the closer you get to a predefined sharp edge. We're nearly there. If I add a map range node in between the distance and the attribute, I can tweak the from max value to create an edge of any thickness, which is exactly what we've been trying to do. I'm going to invert my mask by setting the to min to 1 and the to max to 0. This is just a personal preference. So now we've got the concave and the convex in one mask. How do we get them separately, and how do we use them both at once? The key are these absolute and less than nodes. Let's duplicate the less than node and set it to greater than, and then let's remove the absolute from the chain. When we use the less than node by itself, we only see the convex edges. If we replace it with the greater than node and set the value to -0.4, we get only the concave edges. Sticking it all together is remarkably simple. We'll duplicate the entire node chain and plug one store named attribute into the other, and just make sure that you give the values different names. Then you can access it all from your shader. So here's a little look at how you use those masks. I have two attribute nodes, and each one has the correct name from the store named attribute in the geometry node. For ease of visibility, I've made the concave black and the convex white. So here's a quick example of how you might use it. Maybe you want an object where the paint has worn off the edges and grime is built up in the crevices. And it's this easy to control. I hope this helps you as much as it would have helped me last week, and I'll see you in the next one.